Consider something strange with me again. We are taught that a good man will prosper, that honesty will be rewarded, and that virtue will triumph. That if we are fair with the world will be fair with us. Niccolò Machiavelli looked at history, and he saw no such promise. He saw good men destroyed by ruthless ones, princes ruined because they cannot change, kingdoms swallowed by fortune, while their rulers prayed that goodness would be enough. So he asked a darker question. What must a man become to survive the world as it actually is? Sometimes the lion, sometimes the fox. Merciful when mercy works. Feared when fear is necessary. But capable of abandoning all of it when necessity demands. Because fortune does not ask whether you are ready. She floods the river. She overturns the kingdom. And she changes the rules. Machiavelli's answer was not submission. It was to have the strength, intelligence, audacity, and adaptability to seize whatever part of destiny can be seized. Perhaps the good life is not about remaining innocent before the chaos of the world. Perhaps it is about becoming capable enough that when fortune comes for you, she finds someone prepared to fight back. Welcome back, my fellow stranger, to another episode of Traversing the Strange World. And I'm your host, Isaiah Danbury. And you're listening to another Monday Mornings with Peace. And as has been the tradition in the previous Mondays, we are continuing this quest. We are asking, what is the good life? And today we are considering, what is the good life? Through the eyes of Niccolò Machiavelli. We will explore his idea of virtue and the unsettling possibility that sometimes being good and being effective are not the same thing. And then we will ask, can a truly good life exist without the strength to survive the world as it actually is? But before we go any further, I'd like to ask you to hit like and subscribe. Alright, my fellow stranger, let us traverse this great mystery. Niccolò Machiavelli was born in Florence in 1469 into a world of beautiful art, brilliant ideas, and relentless political violence. Italy was not yet a unified country. It was a battlefield of republics, kingdoms, popes, mercenaries, foreign armies, rival families fighting for control. Machiavelli did not study power from a quiet library. He watched it happen. As a diplomat for the Florentine Republic, he met kings, military commanders, popes, and one of the most feared men of the Renaissance. He watched alliances form and collapse. He saw weak rulers destroyed, strong rulers betrayed, and entire governments overturned by forces that they failed to understand. And then the wheel turned on him. In 1512, the Medici family returned in power in Florence. Machiavelli lost his position. He was arrested, accused of conspiracy, imprisoned, and tortured. After his release, he was politically powerless, and he was pushed into exile from the public life. But then he began writing, and from out of that collapse came The Prince, one of the most controversial political works ever written. Machiavelli stripped politics of comforting illusions. He asked not how rulers should behave in an ideal world, but how power actually survives in a real one. And beneath that question was something even larger. When fortune turns against you, what type of person must you become to remain standing? So let us delve in. What would a good life look like through the eyes of Machiavelli? I think the first pillar in that would be to see the world as it is. Machiavelli, he begins with an uncomfortable demand. Stop refusing the world you wish existed with the world that actually exists. For centuries, philosophers had written about the ideal ruler, the just king, the virtuous statesman, the leader governed by morality. But Machiavelli looked around Renaissance Italy and saw something entirely different. He saw betrayal, fear, and loyalty purchased and lost. Alliances that lasted only as long as they remained useful. He saw rulers destroyed because they behaved according to ideals, while their enemies behaved according to reality. So Machiavelli made one of his most famous intellectual moves. He separated politics from the question of how human beings ought to behave and examined how they actually behave. People can be generous but also selfish, loyal but also frightened, honorable until survival, money, power, or fear gives them a reason not to be. But this does not mean Machiavelli believed everyone was evil. It means he believed true wisdom begins by refusing to build your life on fantasies about human nature. Before you can navigate the world, look differently at it. And perhaps that is the first Machiavellian pillar of the good life. See the world clearly. And so the next pillar of his philosophy would be capable. If Machiavelli's first lesson is to see reality clearly, the second is even more demanding. Become someone capable of acting within it. He called this quality virtue. But Machiavellian virtue does not mean virtue in the modern moral sense. It is something harder. Courage, intelligence, boldness, discipline, strategic judgment, and the ability to act decisively when everyone else hesitates. For Machiavelli, history does not belong to the kindest person in the room. It often belongs to the person who understands the moment and possesses the strength to move when that moment arrives. A ruler may inherit wealth, status, or opportunity, but without virtue, fortune can take all of it away. That is why Machiavelli admired figures who would shape events rather than simply be carried along by them. The Machiavellian does not merely ask, "What is happening to me?" They ask, "What can I do with what is happening?" And that distinction changes everything. Because virtue is not passive resilience. It is active capacity. Develop your mind, strengthen your judgment, learn your craft. Become capable of making decisions when the correct decision is uncertain. And above all, become someone who can act. Because in Machiavelli's world, good intentions without capability are fragile things. And perhaps the second pillar of the good life is this. Do not merely wish to become good, but become effective enough that your virtues can actually survive contact with the world. Machiavelli knew that no amount of intelligence or strength could give a human being complete control over life. There was always another force at work. He called it Fortuna. Fortuna, chance, the unpredictable movement of history that can raise one person to power and destroy another person before they even understand what happened. Machiavelli compared fortune to a violent river. When the waters are calm, people grow comfortable. They build carelessly. They assume tomorrow will resemble today. Then the flood comes. And suddenly everyone discovers rather they prepared while preparation was still possible. Machiavelli believed fortune governs a significant portion of human affairs, but not all of them. And that distinction is everything. You may not control when the economy collapses, when somebody betrays you, when an opportunity disappears, when illness, loss, war, or catastrophe enter your life. But you can build the levee beforehand. You can become educated, capable, strong, corrected, adaptable. You can prepare yourself before the storm announces its arrival. And that is where Machiavelli separates himself from simple fatalism. He does not tell us to surrender to destiny. He does not reduce destiny's authority over us. Prepare while the river is low. Build while life is peaceful. Develop courage before courage becomes necessary. Because when fortune finally arrives, there may be no time left to become the person that the moment requires. And so perhaps that is the third pillar of the good life. You cannot command the storm, but you can decide what kind of person the storm will find when it reaches your door. And I think pillar number 4 would be adapt to necessity. Machiavelli believed one of the greatest weaknesses a person can have is rigidity. To survive a changing world, you must know how to change with it. In The Prince, he gives one of the most famous images. A ruler must learn to both be the lion and the fox. The lion is strength, force, courage, the willingness to confront danger directly. But the lion cannot recognize every trap. That is why you need to be the fox. The fox understands deception. It notices motivations. It sees the snare before stepping into it. Machiavelli's point is not that you should become permanently ruthless or permanently cunning. It is that no single way of behaving will save you in every circumstance. Sometimes mercy preserves order. Sometimes patience is wisdom. Sometimes patience becomes cowardice. Sometimes honesty earns trust, and sometimes the people around you are not playing by the same rules. This is one of the darker parts of his philosophy, because he is willing to say that there may be moments when conventional goodness becomes a liability, not because cruelty is admirable, and power may demand actions that morality would rather avoid. So perhaps the fourth pillar is this: learn when to be the lion, and learn when to be the fox, and develop enough judgment to know the difference. And perhaps Machiavelli's final lesson is the most uncomfortable. Being effective and being good are not always the same thing. He understood that power depends not only on what you are, but what people believe you are. A ruler may need to appear merciful, faithful, honest, and religious, even when circumstances force him to act against those qualities. Reputation matters, fear matters, perception matters, and sometimes cruelty used decisively may preserve order, better than endless weakness disguised as kindness. This is where we have to stop simply admiring him, because capability without a worthy purpose can become domination. Cunning without conscience becomes manipulation. Strength without restraint becomes tyranny. So perhaps Machiavelli does not give us the entire good life. Perhaps he gives us something more dangerous: the tools required to shape the world. And then he leaves us with the question he cannot fully answer to us: what kind of world are we strong enough to create? So then, what would the good life be through the eyes of Machiavelli? It is not a life of comfort. It is not a life built on assumption that goodness alone will protect you. The good life begins by seeing reality clearly: human nature, power, danger, opportunity, and your own weaknesses, without illusion. And then comes virtue. Become capable. Build courage, judgment, strength, intelligence, and the ability to act when others freeze. Prepare for Fortuna, because life will eventually change the rules without asking your permission. And when it does, adapt. Know when to be the lion and when to be the fox. Know when mercy serves the moment and when necessity demands something harder. Machiavelli does not promise that this will make you morally pure. In fact, that is precisely what makes him uncomfortable. He asks whether a person can afford purity in a world that is not pure itself. Perhaps for Machiavelli, the good life is ultimately this: see clearly, become capable, prepare for chaos, adapt without hesitation, and acquire enough power over yourself and your circumstances that fortune does not get the final word. At least I think that's a summary of it, that many of us could perhaps apply to our life. But perhaps there are other aspects of it that are better used as a guideline to understanding other people. We all have an inner ugly, an animal nature that we're not proud of, and if we don't dominate that, it'll dominate us and the world around us. And I think I'm going to leave you at that. What did you think? What do you think of Machiavelli's philosophy? Let me know down in the comments. And if you feel so inclined, share this with a friend or on social media. And I'll ask you one last time to hit like and subscribe. Alright. This concludes this episode, but for you and I, the journey still continues. So let us keep traversing the strange world. Let us always be introspective. Let us always see the world around us as it is. Let us be neighborly to folks. Despite the ugliness of people, we're all scared creatures in this world. We were just kind of cast into it, and we weren't told a lot about it. Life is already in motion by the time we hit the ground running. So at the end of the day, we're all just strangers in a strange land. Until next time, peace.